An art song by one of Manitoba's most celebrated modern composers has gotten a new treatment for audiences to enjoy. Jocelyn Morlock's song cycle Paraqueries debuted back in 2013 with one song dedicated to what is arguably one of the greatest players to ever lace up skates for the Winnipeg Jets, Bobby Hull, and a memorable encounter that took place during a game in 1978. Morlock collaborated with the Leacock Award-winning writer and Classic 107 alum Bill Richardson on the project. Now that song has been rendered into an animated short video by the Canadian Art Song Project. It's called The Piece Atop His Pate. Lawrence Wiliford is the co-artistic and managing director of the project. He joins us from Toronto this morning to tell us more about it. Nice to see you.
Great to see you too. I'm so happy to talk about this little gem of a piece.
A gem it is indeed for so many different reasons. The circumstance that inspired the song itself, we'll get into all of that, but maybe you can take us back to the moment when you first heard this piece of music and what your first impressions were.
Oh, wow. So I think the first time I heard it was in 2015. Canadian Art Song Project did a recital based on humor. The theme was humor, play, and games in Canadian song, an art song. And we had Jeff Surrett and Mary Lou Follis sing the entire cycle in addition to some other things that we were focusing on. And the whole point was silliness in Canadian art song. So that was the first time that I had heard it. My very good friend Tyler Duncan performed this, obviously, and there's a terrific recording of him singing the baritone parts in that cycle. It's for soprano and baritone and pianist. And he's an excellent performer, and so you can hear that as well. And I heard it originally on that, but the first time I heard it performed live was in 2015.
And then fast forward now to 2025, 10 years later, what inspires you and the Canadian Art Song Project to take this song and render it into such a unique little short video, an animated short video?
So I'll try to kind of sum this up into small bits, but it's kind of a larger idea that I had even before the pandemic. I have a daughter, and watching her grow up and trying to figure out like what you can present her kind of in terms of animated shorts or shows that involved classical music and good art was a bit of a challenge when she was little. And I've always thought back to my early childhood and my upbringing and the things that really engaged me in classical music or introduced me into classical music were things like Disney shorts that explained like what the orchestra was doing, and obviously Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes bits, Fantasia. When I was in high school, the Animaniacs doing incredible adaptations of things and being very humorous and satirical with Beethoven and whatnot. So I think animation is a wonderful way to engage with the storytelling that is possible in art song. And during the pandemic, when I couldn't really perform and I was trying to make sure that my daughter was getting an education and juggling life, I couldn't. I decided to pursue another degree in media production at Toronto Metropolitan University. So I did that from home while I was juggling all these other things. But my interest was to figure out how to bring more of this kind of classical music storytelling into a kind of digital space that people can just enjoy in little bites and engage with in a fun way. So that's how the idea of doing animation with Canadian art songs started. The first one was a piece called was an arrangement of a Wade Hemsworth song by Cecilia Livingston, the Canadian Art Song Project commissioned in 2017, and Stephen Philcox, my co-artistic director and pianist and friend, we recorded that together, and we collaborated with OCAD University students in the animation department, and we developed the Wild Goose. That was our first kind of prototype. And then we came back, the students liked that so much, and we saw a lot of opportunities there. And we presented this crazy idea of doing something much more complicated, and that tapped into all sorts of aspects of Canadian hockey culture, the song itself quotes the CBC hockey night theme, the da 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 da. So it does that, and back in the 70s, the CBC, when they presented hockey games, they had this relationship with Hanna-Barbera and NBC, from what I believe, and they presented these little animated shorts by Hanna-Barbera that would like explain the rules of hockey, and they had this mascot called Pete the Puck. And so we used that style in addition to kind of the 70s, early 80s graphics, and brought this all together to formulate this wild story that's just so, it's operatic, it's silly, it's very Canadian, it's satirical. So we just wanted to go for it and see what happened, and that's how we came up with this piece.
So this piece inspired by a moment from Bobby Hull's 1978 season that we've kind of been dancing around. We haven't really fully described what it is. Maybe for those who might not remember this particular incident that we're talking about, what happened to Bobby Hull in this particular game against the Birmingham Bulls in the old WHA?
Yeah, so what the song says happens and what actually happened are slightly different. But basically, Bobby Hull ended up in a bit of a fight on the ice with Dave Hansen, and I think there were several team members that kind of got in this fight. And Dave Hansen accidentally knocked off Bobby Hull's wig. And it ended up on the ice, and everybody's kind of horrified by this moment. There was some confusion as to who actually was responsible. Some people thought it was Dave Hansen or, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the other guy's name that is mentioned in the song now. Steve Durbano. And so there's some confusion about actually who was responsible, but his wig ended up on the ice, and he heads off to locker room and then comes back and he's got his helmet on. And that's what happened. So
okay. So how then, you've talked about all the different elements that make up the piece atop his pate. And that's singing, the music, the animation. Maybe you can walk us through some of how this production then comes together to create this animated short video.
It was incredible. So we worked with the students in the experimental animation department at OCAD University. Mm-hmm. And they also have a program that's called a field placement program, where the students elect to work with third-party organizations or businesses or whatever that have a project that they bring and pitch to the students to be part of. And they work on these projects to gain their own professional experience and then have something that they can kind of show when they want to get a job or get into grad school or whatever that's part of their portfolio. We presented this following the work of the Wild Goose, and we had a whole bunch of students that worked with us for 2 terms last year. I think we were around 20-some students. We had 2 amazing, very, very engaged and creative individuals who took on the role of, number one, storyboarding the pitch that I came up with and kind of the beats that I wanted to follow, and then they also took on the directing roles of kind of really managing and directing the whole thing. So they broke it up into a studio-like atmosphere, and we had certain students that worked on character design. We had some that worked on background. We had some that worked on research to making sure that the hockey nets looked exactly right. And the uniforms were the right colors, or all of this. What did the stadiums actually look like compared to a modern stadium? And it's really interesting because a lot of these students are not native to Canada. They're recent immigrant families. They don't necessarily know the hockey culture of the 70s and 80s. They did a remarkable job on every front, and by the end, we just released it in the fall, and we're just so pleased with it and so proud of it. Yeah.
So, if you think about this performance that is done by on a musical front by the pianist Stephen Philcox, your friend, as well as the baritone Keith Lamb, who sings it in this production. And you compare it with the experience you had first listening to the music in 2015, which was also an incredible performance, but obviously without the animation. What stands out to you about this song now that maybe wouldn't have stood out to you if you had just heard it in a more traditional sort of an art song setting?
So I think in the same way that opera can present different ideas, or if you're doing a recital in person, if you're using kind of projection or kind of stage it differently. A recital production tends to be a traditional recital is singer in the crook of the piano, pianist on side, singer just kind of doing their thing. And all of the kind of storytelling is very animated, but all the images are kind of created in your own mind, the listener's mind. So what this does is we can tap into other things, be influenced by, say, animation by Hanna-Barbera. You know, we're presenting that. We're using visuals that are based on what was from the time period of the actual event. We're tapping into nostalgia beyond just the quoting of the hockey theme. So the presentation is very, very different, but I thought it's an opportunity in the same way that you go to a movie theater or an opera production. There's different elements you can bring into that presentation that's visual, as opposed to just relying on the live experience and the emotive behaviors going on between the pianist and the singer.
So much of the work that the Canadian Art Song Project does is finding these new avenues through which to share art song in an effort to, it preserves the wrong word, but to ensure the vitality of the genre as we continue through history. What did the process of creating this project tell you about how art song might continue to engage with the culture in years to come?
I think in general, the idea of classical music, and we use this word classical music, therefore implies old. And we those of us who make our lives performing classical music, we don't live only in the history, in the old. We are very excited to be in the creative process, in the making new and telling stories that are of now. Every art form it's vital for every art form to participate in that way, whether it's sculpture or dance or jazz or whatever it is, pop. It has to be new and it has to be relevant. And so that's what we're trying to do with this art song, with this kind of genre of storytelling and music making that is rooted in, romantic German traditions of kind of salon singing and intimate singing and storytelling, of sharing poetry and music. So we're just trying to give it an opportunity to live in the contemporary context. How do we engage with things in intimate ways? In many cases, it's through our phones or our devices. That's a one-on-one experience for so many people. That's the most intimate you can possibly be in certain ways. So we're just trying to say, we are here, we are relevant, our stories are relevant, our Canadian stories are fun and silly and poignant, and we want to talk about that and kind of be part of our contemporary culture.
We will have a link to this video, and you'll be able to see how it connects to contemporary culture up at our website this morning, classic107.com and the Classic 107 app. Lawrence Wiliford, it's been so wonderful hearing more about the piece atop his pate today. Thank you so much for joining us here on Classic 107.
My pleasure. Thank you.